When Grace Miller nervously entered the gleaming lobby of St. Hope Private Hospital, she had no idea her small act of kindness would change her life forever. She didn't know that the simple way she smiled, or the way her trembling hands formed words in silent language, would be watched by a man who had forgotten what compassion looked like. A man who owned the hospital. A man whose mother she was about to meet. Chapter 1. The Nurse Who Spoke Without Words. Grace Miller had always believed kindness didn't need sound. Perhaps that's why she had chosen to become a nurse even though her quiet nature often made her invisible in crowded rooms. The other nurses joked that she was too shy to even say hello to the doctors, but they didn't know her secret. Grace could speak fluently in sign language. She had learned it as a child for her younger brother, Ethan, who had been born deaf. He'd passed away years ago from a rare illness, but the language had stayed with her, a piece of him she never wanted to lose. On a cloudy Monday morning, Grace's supervisor informed her that she'd been assigned to a new VIP patient, a woman named Margaret Steele. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but Grace didn't think much of it until she saw the sleek black car that arrived outside the hospital. Two men in suits helped a silver-haired woman out of the vehicle. Margaret walked with elegance, her eyes bright but distant, scanning the lobby as if she were searching for meaning in silence. That's when Grace noticed the hearing aids. Her heart skipped. She stepped forward gently, tapping Margaret's arm so she could see her face. Then, with a calm smile, Grace began to sign. "Hello. I'm Nurse Grace. I'll be taking care of you today." Margaret's eyes widened. For a moment, she looked stunned, then tears filled them. Slowly, she raised her hands and signed back, "You know sign language?" Grace nodded. "Yes. My brother was deaf." Margaret clasped her hands to her heart, trembling. "Thank you, no one has spoken to me like this in years." The two women formed an instant bond. Grace's calmness soothed her, her gentle gestures replaced the cold efficiency Margaret had grown used to from hospital staff. Grace didn't know that in the shadows of the hallway, a tall man in a tailored suit was watching the entire exchange through the glass. Alexander Steele, Margaret's son. CEO of Steele Industries. Billionaire, investor, and the man whose hospital wing Grace worked in. He'd come to check on his mother quietly, but what he saw left him speechless. For the first time in years, his mother was smiling, a real smile, not the polite one she wore for society events. He felt something stir in his chest. He had all the money in the world, yet he hadn't managed to give his mother that simple joy. He wanted to know who this nurse was. Later that evening, Grace sat by Margaret's bedside, holding her hand as she drifted off to sleep. The door creaked open and Alexander entered, his presence commanding. Grace jumped to her feet. "Your nurse Grace Miller?" he asked, his tone crisp, professional. "Yes, sir," she said, nervously smoothing her uniform. "I saw how you treated my mother today," he said. "Not many people take the time to communicate like that." "Thank you." Grace smiled shyly. "She's a wonderful woman, sir. It's easy to care for her." For a moment, their eyes met. There was something in his gaze, curiosity, warmth, maybe even longing, but Grace quickly looked away. She didn't belong in the world of millionaires. She was just a nurse, one who still struggled to pay rent. Alexander left soon after, but her quiet compassion had already made an impression far stronger than she realized. Chapter 2. The CEO Who Forgot How to Feel. Over the next few weeks, Grace became a permanent part of Margaret Steele's care team. She visited her daily, bringing laughter and comfort in the language of silence. The two often sat by the window, signing stories about their families, their dreams, and their losses. Margaret told her about her son, the boy who had once been warm and affectionate but had hardened over time, buried under the weight of business, betrayal, and responsibility. "He doesn't mean to be cold," she signed one day, her hands trembling slightly. "He just forgot how to listen." Grace smiled softly. "Then maybe he just needs someone to remind him." Margaret's knowing eyes twinkled. "Maybe that someone is you." Grace laughed, shaking her head. "Oh, Mrs. Steele, he's my boss. He probably doesn't even remember my name." But she was wrong. Alexander remembered everything. Her calm voice, her gentle hands, the way his mother's eyes lit up when Grace entered the room. He found himself lingering by his mother's doorway more often, inventing excuses to visit. One afternoon, he overheard his mother signing to Grace, "My son needs someone like you in his life." Grace flushed, embarrassed. I think he's doing just fine without me. But when she turned, Alexander was there, leaning against the doorframe, eyes soft but intense. Actually, he said quietly, I'm not. The room fell silent. Grace's heart pounded as he stepped closer. I lost my father young, Alexander confessed. After that, I buried myself in work. I built an empire, but somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling. Seeing you with my mother, it reminded me of what I've been missing. Grace didn't know what to say. Her throat tightened. I was just doing my job, sir. He smiled faintly. You call it your job. I call it grace. From that day forward, something changed. Alexander began learning sign language, surprising his mother with a simple, shaky, good morning. Margaret cried tears of joy. And Grace, quiet, humble Grace, found herself drawn into the world of a man who had everything, yet cherished her for the simplest thing she'd given him, connection. Months passed, and Margaret's health improved. On her last day at the hospital, she took both their hands, her son's and Grace's, and signed, "Promise me you won't stop speaking with your hearts." They both nodded. Not long after, Alexander appeared in the hospital garden where Grace often spent her breaks. He signed clumsily but sincerely. You changed my life. Grace smiled, eyes glistening. You learned. He took her hands gently. With the right teacher. The camera of the YouTube video would fade out on that moment, the CEO and the shy nurse, hands moving in harmony against the golden sunset, while Margaret's voice, recorded earlier, echoed softly in the background. Sometimes, love doesn't need words. It just needs someone willing to listen, even